In the world of technology and innovation, few names shine as brightly as Steve Jobs. But what most people forget, or never even knew, is that Steve Jobs was once fired from the very company he founded. Imagine building something from scratch, pouring your entire soul into it, only to be cast out and told you weren't needed anymore. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. But for Steve Jobs, it was just the beginning of an incredible comeback. Let's travel back to the 1970s. Steve Jobs was a young visionary in California with wild dreams and an almost reckless belief in the impossible. With his friend Steve Wozniak, he started Apple in his parents' garage. They didn't have money, they didn't have investors, and they didn't have approval from the big corporate world. What they did have was passion, determination, and an unshakable belief that technology could change lives. Their early work led to the Apple II, one of the first highly successful personal computers. Suddenly, Apple wasn't just a garage project anymore. It was a company worth millions. By the age of 25, Jobs was a multimillionaire. He was on magazine covers, hailed as a genius, and seemed unstoppable. But here's the thing about success. It doesn't last forever if you stop learning, adapting, or if you let pride cloud your vision. Jobs, brilliant as he was, also had a fiery temper and an uncompromising attitude. He clashed with colleagues, frustrated his board of directors, and often demanded perfection in ways that left people exhausted. In 1985, at just 30 years old, Steve Jobs was fired from Apple, the company he had created. Let that sink in. Fired from his own dream. For most, this would feel like a public humiliation too heavy to recover from. But instead of collapsing under the weight of failure, Jobs called this moment the best thing that could have ever happened. Why? Because it freed him to start again, to rediscover his creativity without the burden of running a giant corporation. With renewed energy, he started a new computer company called Next. At the same time, he purchased a small animation studio from George Lucas. That studio, it would later become Pixar. Think about this for a moment. Had Jobs never been fired from Apple, there might never have been Toy Story, Finding Nemo, or The Incredibles. Pixar became a pioneer in animated films, eventually merging with Disney and changing the face of entertainment forever. Meanwhile, Next didn't become a massive commercial success, but it developed powerful technologies that would later play a critical role in Apple's future. Then came the twist of fate. In 1997, Apple was on the brink of collapse. Its products were failing, its stock was plummeting, and it was in desperate need of a new vision. The very company that had fired Jobs reached out and asked him to come back. Most people would have let pride take over. They would have said, "You fired me, remember? Now you deal with your mess." But Jobs didn't think that way. He saw the bigger picture. He returned to Apple, not with bitterness, but with renewed purpose. What happened next is legendary. With a mix of simplicity, design brilliance, and marketing genius, Jobs led Apple into an era of groundbreaking products. The iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad. Each of these didn't just succeed, they revolutionized entire industries. Music, phones, computers, entertainment, all were transformed by his vision. Apple went from being on the edge of bankruptcy to becoming the most valuable company in the world. And the man who was once humiliated, cast out, and doubted became a global icon of innovation. But here's the deeper lesson. Jobs' story isn't just about technology. It's about failure, resilience, and vision. Failure is not the end. Getting fired, losing money, being rejected, none of these define your future unless you let them. For Jobs, failure became the doorway to reinvention. Resilience is about getting back up when life knocks you down. Most of us avoid risk because we're terrified of failing. But Jobs showed that sometimes failure clears the way for a new kind of success. And vision? Vision means seeing beyond the immediate pain, beyond the obstacles, and keeping your eyes on the possibility of what could be. Jobs didn't just build products. He built tools that connected people, inspired creativity, and changed the way we live. Think about your own life. Maybe you've been fired. Maybe your dream collapsed. Maybe you've been rejected so many times you're ready to quit. But what if, like Jobs, this is not the end? What if your setback is setting you up for a comeback? Every giant achievement you see in the world today has a story of failure behind it. Edison failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. Oprah was told she wasn't fit for TV. Walt Disney was fired for lacking creativity. And Jobs was kicked out of his own company. The difference between those who fail and those who rise again isn't luck. It's persistence, faith, and the courage to try one more time. So, when you face your own firing moment in life, when the world tells you you're redone, remember Steve Jobs. Remember that what feels like an ending may be the very beginning of something extraordinary. As Jobs himself once said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward." So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. Your job isn't to avoid failure. Your job is to keep moving forward, to trust that even the hardest moments are shaping you for something greater. So the next time you stumble, the next time life knocks you flat, ask yourself, am I willing to rise again? Because your greatest comeback might be waiting just on the other side of your greatest setback. And that is the untold comeback story of Steve Jobs. Backhand index pointing right if this story inspired you. Subscribe to Epic Life Hub for more powerful stories of resilience, wisdom, and success that will help you rise, no matter where you are in life.